Oh, hi. Hope everything's great. This is Bruce. If you've been following the videos at all, then you probably know that, or if you see the title, you probably know that. But anyway, this is me, and this is what you get. That's what you get sometimes. I understand that I haven't been 1,000% consistent, but nevertheless, this is me, and this is a classroom in the forest. And today, I'm going to talk about my something that's important to me. Oh wait, I have to make a little change. Kind of, you're witnessing the amateurish aspects of this whole affair, because I'm not a professional video person. I'm like most people that do these YouTubes. I'm just a person that I'm doing my best. Okay, well, trying to do my best. I don't know if this is really my best. If I really bear down, I could possibly have a slightly higher production value, but notwithstanding. Put that down there for a second. What I would like to do is I'd like to talk about people, and goodness gracious, there's a lot of people in the world that benefit us, right? There's a lot of people that benefit us. So right now I'm going to talk about what the heck, the Prime Minister of Canada. Why not? Okay, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And if you live in Canada, you drive around and you might see a lot of people with some really expressing strongly some negative viewpoints, and sometimes in a profane way, and sometimes they're expressing these viewpoints in what could only be characterized as a violent way. And I'd like to say that that's not good. And then we had this episode where there was some people that had basically invaded Ottawa and then taken over the Ambassador Bridge, and then there was some other issues and these guys are an extreme fringe. Okay, you could say that they are to Canadians as Hell's Angels motorcycle people are to motorcycle clubs, or villains are to the society in general. It's an extreme shortage. Okay, so anyway, and one of these things that these people talk about is freedom. Okay, freedom. Now, when I talk about freedom is that you can drive around in Canada in your pickup truck. It seems to always be a pickup truck, and in your pickup truck you have a sign or a flag or two flags. They seem to have stolen the Canadian flag in a way, but they've taken they drive around their flag and they have something that says profanity Trudeau, or something very negative. Now, and then they say you want freedom. Well, there's a guy that makes videos. There's a channel that I recommend that you see. It's 1420. It's a gentleman named Daniel. Daniel makes videos in Russia, makes videos in Moscow. You want to talk about courage? That guy, holy smoke. I mean, I'm here. The worst thing I'm going to do is offend somebody, and maybe there's almost a minuscule chance that someone, my very small audience, will bump into me in the street and they'll say, I didn't like what you said. And I talked a couple of videos ago, yeah, I've been punched in the face before, but that almost for sure won't happen. Freedom. Russia. People are afraid to speak negatively at all about Putin, our the diminutive Russian dictator. In Russia, there's fear of saying anything negative towards this person. Freedom. North Korea. Well, they certainly aren't saying anything negative about Kim Jong-un, or the guy that's the dictator there. Or there's many examples throughout the world where freedom of expression, freedom of the press, freedom of whatever does not exist. Talk about courage. Journalists in Mexico writing about politicians and drug cartels, and it's apparently the most dangerous place in the world to be a journalist, and scores of them are killed. That's a quest for freedom. So here in Canada, yeah, I'm in Canada. Go figure. Freedom. I can say anything I want to anybody I want, anytime I want, pretty much. I mean, we have rules about hate speech, which is basically, hate speech is bad. I mean, hate speech is kind of like rallying people to force a strong negative, the negative emotion of hate. Hate is not a logical thing. It's the manifestation of an emotion, and you force that upon people, and that's bad. So anyway, on this, one of the things that got me going is that I like to talk about public policy and actual policy, as opposed to just throwing spurs at a politician or a person. But one thing we have in Canada, we have wisely, under the recommendation of climate scientists and economists and very dispassionate people that study things deeply, we have implemented a price for pollution. Okay, we've implemented a price for pollution. It's a price on carbon emissions. Carbon emissions are, you heard me say it before, carbon emissions are bad. There's a few grave dangers facing the world right now. Carbon emissions is at the forefront of that, period. Here in Canada, we've had, it's not an exaggeration, I don't think, to say we've had hundreds of billions of dollars of damage over the past couple of years due to the climate emergency and climate change. And so having a price on carbon is going to move things from burning stuff to not burning stuff. Okay, and we have choices other than to burn things. I mean, we have the choice of solar energy, photovoltaics. If you do the simple arithmetic on, people will say, well, photovoltaics, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to put photovoltaics on the entire province of Saskatchewan? Well, no. You're going to put photovoltaics on the entire whatever, Quebec? No. It's not necessary. You do the math. Math is pretty easy, pretty straightforward. I'll give you a couple of assumptions. Assumption number one square meter of photovoltaics gives you 200 watts of energy. Okay, if 200 watts. So start with that. A little bit of homework. Go ahead. Maybe I'll do it later. I think I probably did it before, but it's a good assumption. We have choices. Photovoltaics. We have wind energy. We have offshore wind energy. Wind is great. The negative of wind is that some people see the turbines and they don't like them. Okay, so it's possible to put them somewhere where you can't see them. That's what's happened in France and Brittany and Scotland. Oh, by the way, Scotland decided one day that they were going to have like 100% of their electric generation be through non-emitting sources and renewables. And so it was a Canadian oil company president that phoned up the Scottish Prime Minister and said, we would like to build your turbines, please. And that guy's name's Jim Buckey. I think he's president of Talisman Energy, but don't, I mean, someone that's more knowledgeable than me can leave it in the comments and correct that. Okay, so this idea of a price on carbon. Then what's happened is we have, let's draw a line. This is the east. This is the west. More specifically, let's just say this is Alberta. This is the east, which would be Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Okay, now, what happens in Alberta, it started at about 1940 something or other with a thing called the Leduc discovery. If you're into the history of Canada, the history of Alberta, the Leduc discovery was the discovery of oil in Alberta, and that beget was the inception of an industry. Okay, so it started in 1948. It's still going strong today, and it's going to be going strong for decades, scores of years into the future. No question about it. Okay, there you go. Now it waxes and wanes with the global price of oil because, let's say if the global price of oil is $10 per barrel, then that's not a lot of incentive to produce oil in Alberta if your production costs are, say, $15 or $20 per barrel. If the global price of energy is $100 of oil is $100 per barrel, then that is a lot of incentive to produce oil in Alberta, and correspondingly, it's like boom times. Everybody, it's like a scene out of Deadwood. Everyone's excited and drilling like crazy, and there's lots of money being spent on tar sand production, and it is tar sand. It's like, you can call it. I can talk about that in a high level of detail if you really want. Leave me a comment if you want to get the outrageous explanation on how that works. Okay, so anyway, Alberta, loosely, Alberta extracts oil from the ground and sells it. Okay, these places here. If you roll the clock back to, let's pretend, 1978. 1978, if you had a house in one of these places, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland, the likelihood was that you were heating your home with oil, furnace oil, okay? That's it, furnace oil. It's heavy, it's soupy, it's thick-ish, all right? Now, if you live in Alberta, or let's just say you live in Quebec, that's a bad way to write Quebec. If you live in Quebec, you live in Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC, okay? One of these places. Now, talking about 1978. 1978, if you live in one of these places, there's a good chance that the source of heat for your house was natural gas. Okay. Now, if you fast forward to today, there's a great number of places here are using heat pumps and insulation. Heat pumps and insulation are, if you're wondering how to heat your house, how to have a source of energy for your comfort, that is the present correct plan. Electricity, heat pumps, and insulation. But let's just say right now there's a bunch of people that for whatever reason don't have that. Okay, so if you do not have that, and you're in, let's just say, Saskatchewan, and you're heating your house with what's called natural gas or fossil gas, or basically it's methane, but really it's a mixture of 99 point whatever % methane and a bunch of other stuff. Okay, if you're heating your house with that, a typical monthly heating bill for a single family house with a reasonable level of insulation would be some number like $150 to $250. Correct me in the comments. Go ahead. When I lived in Saskatchewan, I was renting a single-family house in a small community there, and the heating bill I thought was a mistake. It was some number like $60 or $50 a month for natural gas, which is crazy. I couldn't believe it. Okay. And right now, it's like I said, it's a number similar to that. Now, let's say you take that same house and you move it from here to this pile over here. Now you're not using natural gas. What you're using is what's called home heating oil. Now, how much does it cost to heat your house with home heating oil? Well, it is not uncommon for a house in this area to be spending, I'm going to write this down here. I'm going to start with the $. Spending this much, $500 to maybe $1,000. Okay. So remember here I said it was a number like 100-ish, 200-ish. Here, 500 to 1,000. Okay. This number over here, 100-ish, 200-ish. That's a single family dwelling. That's your heating bill for a month. 1 month, okay? Now, go over here. I said the same house, $500 to $1,000, that is your heating bill. You think, well, that's a lot, but it's not crazy. These guys are spending $200. Maybe you're spending $500 over here. Yeah, there you go. Okay, there's a difference. The difference is this. This is a month. I'm talking $500 a week, $100 a day, $1,000 a week, $140 a day for home heating oil to heat your house to a temperature that you would still find chilly. Okay, now The extreme examples of this might be, this is the example that's used in the news, is an elderly person that's living alone in their family legacy house that was built in, let's say, 1910, has single pane windows, has never been modernized, and it has 5 bedrooms. They're living alone. So that's craziness. So they're spending $1,000 a week to heat their house. That's a massive amount of money. It's a massive amount of energy. It's a massive amount of greenhouse gases being emitted. And you can go back and look at some of my other videos I make talking about home heating oil. But it's nutso. And so the correct, it's Canada. Remember I talked about freedom? You can do kind of what you want. But one good idea might be to sell that house, move into a smaller dwelling, insulate that house, replace the windows, replace it with the heating source with heat pumps and insulation, and maybe get a few roommates to share the pain. But there you go. So then the Atlantic Canadian caucus of the governing party and Atlantic politicians in general and people, I mean, remember, if you roll back the clock on these videos to their early days, I talked about economics and I explained that the role of the individual, the role of a human being, is to maximize happiness. Okay, maximize happiness so that you are happy, and no one is happy paying through the nose to heat their house and to live a comfortable life. And I also said that we're rational, a rational actor. So a rational person faced with a $1,000 per week heating situation in the month of January and February is going to seek an alternative. They're going to say, oh, this house is a barn, we have to insulate it, or I have to move, or heating with home heating oil is crazy. Wait a second, all my neighbors have heat pumps, maybe I should get a heat pump. And if you go to a place, Cape Breton Island, which is like one of the most expensive places to heat your house in Canada, most people have stepped away from relying solely on oil and they've moved to heat pumps. And everyone that has a heat pump, you say, hey, what do you think of your heat pump? You're like, this is awesome, it's great, it's reduced my expenses for heating the house by some crazy percentage, like it's 70% less or it's 80% less. In some cases, a heat pump combined with insulation, it might be 90% less that you're spending to heat your house. That's it. So anyway, so there was a move to say that maybe we could reduce the price of pollution on the specific case of home heating oil, because that. Now, in a way, I'm unhappy that there has been an abatement. They've carved out this from this pricing on carbon. So the carbon price does not apply to home heating oil, and the region of Canada where it has the biggest effect is on the East Coast. And so naturally, the people that are spending $100 a month as opposed to $1,000 a week, you're spending $100 a month, you're a human being. $100 a month, you want it to be less. Everyone does. It's normal. Whatever it is, you want to spend less on something that isn't that fun to spend your money on. Okay. However, it is a false analogy, a false equivocation between it's just false to compare natural gas heating with furnace oil heating. Okay. And there's another reason why it is sort of a false thing. I'll explain it. Okay. Over here, I've got a little map. This is a map. Okay, this is a map. I'll label it a little bit. This up here, Meat Cove. Okay, right here, this is Sydney. Here's North Sydney, and there's a ferry that goes over to the island of Newfoundland. And over here is Mabou. For no particular reason, I've included Mabou, I've included Sydney, I've included Meat Cove. That is a map. Now, I'm coming over here, I'm drawing another map. Okay. Put some labels here. There's a label, there's a label, there's a label, and there's a label. This thing keeps moving and I'm not enough of a scientist or not handy enough to prevent it from moving. So I get this extra exercise of pushing it back. But over here, let's do some labels. Okay, here is Fort McMurray. This is Lake Athabasca. This is Grand Prairie. This is Edmonton. This is Calgary. Then there's, connecting these two places, believe it or not, is a transportation system that's comprised of pipelines, ships, railways, and trucks. Okay? So what happens is stuff comes from the ground over here, or might be over here in Saskatchewan, or different places, and it travels in the transportation of pipelines, railways, trucks, and whatever. And it goes over here, and then what happens over here is it gets burned. It gets converted to basically carbon dioxide, H2O, and then a bunch of nastiness. Nastiness is another way of saying smoke. Stuff that's coming out of your chimney, your smokestack. It's called the byproduct of combustion. It's incomplete combustion. It's fine particulates that'll get in your lungs. It's benzenes, it's ethenes, it's complicated molecules that have bad effects on you, your life, and your children. So that's what happens, is the stuff goes from here, goes over to here, and it gets burned. Now let's talk about this thing. Then what happens is money, okay? Money, that $1,000 a week that someone is spending on furnace oil is going from here over to here, okay? That's what's happening, is the money is flowing westward, and the oil is flowing eastward. Now there's also oil production in offshore Newfoundland, and there had been some natural gas or methane fossil gas production in the Sable Island area, and there's some other projects, but this is close enough to real that we're within the error bars of accurate here. This is what happens. Okay, so money. Now you can draw your own conclusion, and my conclusion is this. My conclusion is that this is Alberta, to a lesser extent Saskatchewan. Manitoba is also a producer of fossil fuels. British Columbia is over here, west. Excuse my map drawing, but what's going to happen for the foreseeable future, like for decades, for scores of years, for maybe a century, I don't know, is that this area will continue to produce oil. They will continue to produce fossil fuels. They will continue to produce petroleum energy, right? Which isn't really kind of energy. It's like petroleum energy is like an intermediary between the sun a billion years ago and dirt right now. And so they're going to produce that, and they're going to get an influx. And then they've had a bit of a boom the past 18 months because some global disruptions, otherwise known as an invasion of Ukraine, have caused the price of petroleum, the West Texas Intermediate, Brent crude, and oil in general to go up. Okay, there you go. So the point is this: the Canadian government is doing, I think, an admirable job of identifying a problem and working to implement an equitable solution that is going to share the pain, move it all uniformly as much as possible. And the problem is this climate change stuff, this is real. Climate disruption, climate emergency, that's real. So we have basically you have Alberta on fire, British Columbia on fire, Quebec on fire, New Brunswick on fire, Nova Scotia on fire. They almost burnt down Halifax. Okay, these are forest fires. The forest fires magnified by the fact that October was the hottest October in the history of keeping track, and so it's hotter, so things are drier, so they're prone to violent combustion. That's one manifestation of the climate emergency. Another manifestation is intense weather events. Flooding. I mean, we had tremendous flooding in Nova Scotia. We had Fiona, the damage from Fiona, with the post-tropical depression or something called by the time it got to Nova Scotia. And you can draw lines on a map and talk about temperatures or whatever, but one manifestation of that is you have in the province, Newfoundland, Labrador, and the town of Port aux Basques, and the other towns, houses were removed by the force of wind, the force of water, the force of tidal, basically manifestation of the climate emergency. Then if you go to the Northwest Territories in northern Canada, you have villages have been removed and settlements have been removed by fires. And you go to British Columbia and you have whole towns burned down, and they threaten to burn down twice. Hey, that's craziness. This is a manifestation of the climate emergency, which comes from anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, full stop, period, and yeah, and leadership, and courage, and freedom. Okay? So we live in Canada, we can say whatever we want, and you can have your opinion, whatever your opinion may be, but if your opinion, I recommend that if your opinion is something that affects all your neighbors and affects our country, I recommend that you seek out formal education on the reality that underpins that opinion. Okay, there you go. So you might enjoy some classes in thermodynamics. I say this all the time. You might enjoy some classes in macroeconomics. I say this all the time. You might enjoy, you might enjoy a coffee with your neighbor, right? Anyway, my name's Bruce. I know this was a long-winded one. I hope it was semi-okay, enjoyable. If you like this riveting content, please subscribe. If you don't like it, leave a comment telling me why and subscribe anyway. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you don't like the video, hit the like button. There's zero opportunity cost to you hitting the like button. Right? Anyway, hope all is well. Okay, bye now. Oh yeah, and if you're undergoing a renovation or doing any work on your house whatsoever, insulation, windows, heat pump. There you go.